Transmission.
Welcome, YouTubers, for this exclusive interview with Meteors CEO Geoff Schmidt. We're going to be talking right now about the company of MDG. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to have the opportunity to be on Transmission.
Woohoo! Thank you so much for being here. Sashko, welcome to the show as usual, man. Yeah. So let's dive into this. MDG as a company, people are super interested in it. You guys influence a worldwide group of developers, and very few of them are able to come to the Meteor Nights and meet you guys face to face, get to know you guys, get to see what's going on behind the scenes. And this has built a lot of intrigue. So in this section, we got a few questions about this. Geoff, I'm going to lead off. MDG does a lot. How do you see MDG's role in the wider Meteor ecosystem?
You know, I think it's a role that has changed over time and it is continuing to change, because in the beginning, MDG was 3, then 4, then 5 people. And, this was back in, it was, 2012 when we started, and we were just sitting in a room writing software, hoping someone on the internet would like it at some point over the next couple years. So in the beginning, MDG's role was much more to try to build the complete system all ourselves and write the code, and then try to just get that initial group of developers around it so that we could have some momentum and so that we could have a community. And I think that as the years has passed and thinking about where we are looking forward, I think that Meteor, we need to navigate this shift from Meteor being a product of MDG to MDG being just one participant in the Meteor ecosystem, and look at it more as a partnership between MDG, between all the community members, and also between all the different companies that are building on Meteor. And I'm just really excited about some of the progress that we've seen on that front, where we're seeing more and more really good pull requests from really sophisticated teams of people that are building their companies and their businesses on Meteor. There's more and more people full-time on Meteor. There's more and more people that have a better and better understanding of the stack outside MDG. And that's what's enabling us to shift into a mode where it's more of a partnership and more open. A big milestone there is also going to be Meteor 1.3, and with the new NPM support the much broader NPM support in Meteor 1.3, that's going to make it much easier for us to break Meteor Core into a larger number of packages that are more independent, and that thus we can have more and more external maintainers on. And so this is all part of a broader priority for us this year of having more and more community engagement and a better and better partnership with the community, both in the sense of the open source community and also in the sense of the full-time teams and the companies built on Meteor. Inside all of that, there's something that we can't lose, which is we want to deliver a great developer experience, and we want to deliver a trusted platform. So, and I think this is one of the basic tensions in open source sometimes. It's got to be open, it's got to be collaborative, it's got to be a partnership. At the same time, when people are going to commit, if you're going to commit your project to a platform like Meteor or like any other platform, you want to feel like there's a vendor that's standing behind that's looking out for you. There have to be people that you trust, so you know that if you pick this technology, it's going to go well for you. So I think another element of our role in the community is we want to make sure that trust is always there. Not every line of code needs to come from us, but people need to know that they can trust the Meteor platform. And I see a big part of our job as making sure that trust happens. And finally, one other piece, there's some work that nobody wants to do. The kind of work that go home on the weekends and say, I want to contribute to an open source project, or when people think, I built some really cool stuff as I was using Meteor at my company, and then I want to give this back to the community. If you add all that stuff up, there's still some pieces missing. These are things like release engineering or marketing, or sometimes making sure that new Meteor developers have a good first experience with the platform. There's a lot of heavy lifting that goes on behind the scenes just to make sure all the pieces are glued together. That heavy lifting costs money, and I think part of MDG's role is to provide that service to the community as well, to do some of the stuff that nobody else wants to do to make sure that we have a great platform.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So that last part that you said, making sure things are at a high quality level, that's something that you guys have always been known for. like releasing amazing things of high quality. The new thing that's really interesting is now you guys are bringing the community in more into the core and everything, and breaking things up. That is super interesting. We're going to tap into that a little bit more, because that's different than in the past.
A lot of progress there that we've made both as MDGs and as a community, and I think we can expect more in the future too.
So my question is, with MDG's role with the Meteor ecosystem changing a little bit, where you guys are weighing a little bit more on the community, what kind of spurred that on, that change? Like, I always thought it could be like just getting over the initial hump, because like what you guys were doing was so technologically advanced at the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's what it is. There's sort of two kinds of open source projects that you can find out there in the world. There's some projects are written by a small group of people, or even maybe one or two people, and it all basically comes, all the vision and also all the code and all the implementation comes from that small group of people. An example of a project like that might be MySQL, where almost all of it was written by MySQL employees, and with that, even a lot of it was written by one brilliant database engineer who started the project. On the other end of on the other extreme, you've got something like Apache, where the project really is just the combination of small efforts from a very large number of people. Not to say that they're small efforts, but to say that it's much more of a wide collaboration. And there's, as sometimes people use the term cathedral and bazaar for these two kinds of projects. I think
that conversation came up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the stuff that we had to build in the very beginning to get Meteor off the ground to the point that we had a complete end-to-end system, like every brick in the arch was in place, so the arch could stand, if you would. That work was more like a cathedral. There was a lot of just systems engineering to do, a lot of almost basic research or pieces that needed to fit together, because so many of the ideas in Meteor were so new when we started. And now we're getting to a point where those ideas are a lot more mature. They're known by more people in the community. And also, and so a lot more of the, more and more of the action, the activity is across the stack, not just in the low-level engine. But the other thing that's happening is the world of full-stack JavaScript app development has developed so much over the last couple of years. So when we started, people thought we were crazy. And now there are so many people out there that are working in this space and have so many good ideas. It's absolutely vital for us to have a vital platform that's serving the needs of our community. It's vital that we bring more people in so we can have all those ideas and all those points of view represented, because there's so much thinking, there's so much development that's happening. We want Meteor to be the best of JavaScript. We can't do that alone. Whereas when we started making things like Mongo oplog tailing drivers were the kinds of things you almost have to do alone. So I think there's a shift in the industry, and the other thing is, like, frankly, it's something we have the bandwidth to focus on.
So that's really interesting, and what you said kind of goes hand in hand now, where now that we have 1.3 coming out, we have better support for NPM, and NPM has matured over these years as well. What do you see for MDG's role in the larger node ecosystem?
So Meteor needs to be the best of JavaScript. And in the beginning, a lot of the pieces of Meteor were things that we built because there was no standard way to do something, or there was we were just starting from square one on so many areas in the beginning and for Meteor 1.0. And an example of this would be even just thinking about Blaze. When we originally, in the very beginning, started working on the Meteor code base, the first thing that we wanted to work on was the data transport problem, because we could see that how big of a gap that was. And kind of the way that, and this was way before it was called Meteor, the way it grew to the Meteor that we all know now and that we launched as the first version of Meteor was, we realized when we were trying to make complete examples around that Mongo-based data system that we built, we just looked at what that looked like if you put it next to Backbone, which was the reigning view layer of the day. And there was so much boilerplate. We could see that the potential of a full stack, pure JavaScript reactive system just wasn't being met by the stuff that existed in the ecosystem. So we invented a lot of stuff to deliver that complete end-to-end experience. Now we're at a really exciting point in the evolution of JavaScript where you can almost look at some of the technology that was inside Meteor in the beginning as being a set of predictions about what the world would need. And what's great now is there are a lot of these things that originally, like Meteor design, are becoming standards and that have broader support across the JavaScript ecosystem. So a great example would be one of the things that we saw pretty early in Meteor was we needed a better way to do namespacing and dividing up your app into packages and files and modules on the client, because there was a time when everyone just put whatever they had, it was just globals in this like global browser namespace. So we built a set of namespacing functionality where you can have packages, you can have exports, your code. There's some static analysis done on your code so that not all the variables are visible everywhere. Now we have ES 2015 modules. ES 2015 modules is a great standard, and there's been a ton of work done by the whole JavaScript community to really understand everyone's needs around modularity in JavaScript. And ES 2015 modules is a great standard, so we can move from the homebrew Meteor invented technology to ES 2015 modules, and we can align with the broader JavaScript ecosystem. And that makes things better for everyone. So one of my big goals for Meteor this year, everywhere there's an emerging standard or new technology where we can align Meteor with these other technological forces in the JavaScript industry to complete that alignment. 1.3 is a big step toward that, and I'd take it beyond the Node ecosystem to the whole JavaScript ecosystem. I think that there are really two things. So first of all, I would say there's huge potential for JavaScript. This has to be something that we all do together. So Meteor can't be an island. We need to have good collaborative relationships with everything else that's going on inside JavaScript. And a big focus for me this year is really proactively making sure that all those relationships are the very best that we can be, and to the extent that we can, aligning all of our roadmaps across the industry so we're not competing, so we're all working in the same direction.
So that's super interesting, because like early on when I came on to Meteor, I loved it instantly. And the one thing that I said was it did seem like an island in a lot of ways. And now going into 2016, it's really amazing to see how the industry has caught up, the JavaScript world has caught up to what you guys envisioned all along. And you guys are actually ambitious enough to make the changes to Meteor to adopt those things. Like that's amazing to you guys. And then the recent integration and collaboration that you guys are trying to do with GraphQL, it's amazing.
Can I throw one other thing in here before we end the segment?
Absolutely.
I guess I just want to say that if this section's about MDG, the company, I would just say, let's talk about the company for a minute. We're a developer experience company. Our goal is to make application software development radically easier, faster, less expensive, more accessible. We think application software development is a huge lever on the world, and if we can make that process easier and if we can include more people in it, that's the best way that we can help. So that's why I'm doing this. Out of we all have many choices about what we can do with our lives, that's why I'm here. So I think that's a big project. That's a big plan. That's the kind of thing that you can work on for years or a decade or a career or multiple lifetimes.
Absolutely.
Though I really hope the situation is going to be a lot better in the next 5 or 10 years. I just think as an industry, we're making incredible progress on all those fronts. So MDG is a company that we always have to keep fresh and that we always have to keep aligned with that mission. So the form that takes at one point in time isn't always going to be the form that it takes at every point in time. So maybe if our role a couple of years ago was trying to invent a lot of new stuff to push the industry forward faster and provide one of the inputs that goes into the discussion that we're having in the industry now, great. But today, we need to keep on listening to what people are asking for and just always ask ourselves the question, what's going to push application software development the fastest? And what's the best way for our community that is doing this with us to help the most, and what's the best way we can serve our community and the people that are building on the platform. So that really has to be, I just feel like that has to be the North Star for everything we do. It can't be attachment to any particular piece of technology. It's also not the case that we can just rewrite the whole stack one day and say, hey, oh, everything's different now. There has to be a transition path forward, but that's what gets me out of bed in the morning every day. So in trying to understand, where are these guys coming from, thinking that we have to align with the rest of JavaScript and we have to build a database agnostic stack that works with SQL and REST data sources as well as Mongo. I think if you start with that philosophy as our motivations, like you'll be able to predict just about everything we do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cutting edge, very ambitious project, and a huge focus on backwards compatibility. Every day,
at least a transition plan. Like, there's let's be real. There are limits. I mean, technology advances, right? If you and there's times where for the health of an ecosystem, you have to break some backwards compatibility and ask people to go port their application or some part of their application.
Yeah,
it's about good communication. It's about a clear path forward. It's about letting you decide the right time for you to do it. And it's about providing real benefit and maturity in the new option. And I think that we as an industry have a lot of reference points to look toward other projects that have done this well and other projects that have done this, maybe in more abrupt ways. And, we're always, as the platform evolves over the years, there's always going to be times when APIs change. And I just think we have to really study history in other projects and listen to the community to ask the best way to do that.
Very interesting. Very good. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to stay a little bit longer on this subject because I did want to wrap up these questions.
Sure.
I know people are dying for it. Earlier in the conversation, you said that you wanted to make the path as clear as possible for making really complex apps. And I think you guys do that really well because it is super complex building apps. And if you could clarify the developer path, the happy path for developers, there is a huge opportunity there. With all that you guys do and everything that Meteor does, and with the future plans with Apollo and all that stuff, who do you think your primary targeted audience is right now? Like, would it be enterprise developers, professional developers? Would it be new people coming into development, like designers transitioning over to app development?
We target Meteor at professional web developers. So these may be new professional developers, people who are just getting started. Maybe they just graduated from developer boot camp, or it could be people with 10 or 20 years of experience. We want to build the best tools for people who are building software professionally to get their apps written in a way that is not just fast and easy, but is well positioned in the sense of professional best practices that we all know and hopefully love as professional developers. So I want to talk about two things on that subject. The first is, how do we get Meteor into the enterprise? So I think there's two different, we're already seeing a lot of department level adoption of Meteor in the enterprise. And so there are people inside the enterprise who have the ability to pick their own technologies, where there's bottoms up adoption that's possible, where you find Meteor, you decide you like it, you decide to use it. Meteor already does well in those environments. When we think about the future of Meteor in the enterprise and how we can continue to grow Meteor usage in the enterprise, I think SQL is the biggest topic. So when we think about what we're doing with Apollo and ways of bringing more data sources into Meteor, I think we're going to see some really powerful and exciting stuff there, because one of the things that we see when there's enterprise usage of Meteor is a lot of times people have several different data sources from several different systems that they all want to pull together and then put maybe a little bit more business logic on top of it that's specific to an application and service that onto a set of mobile devices. And I think we're going to see a stronger and stronger story in those really complex enterprise environments with lots of different data sources and lots of different integration points coming with Apollo as we move beyond a stack that is so focused on MongoDB. The other thing, and this gets back to your question about the role of MDG, I think there's going to be more and more that we can do as a company to provide support to the developers who are bringing bringing Meteor into the enterprise, to help them make sure that they can get the approvals they need to deploy it. So we've already have some great proof points, like Meteor won Gartner Cool Vendor last year. And I think that's something that's never far from our minds as we think about for people that need to get more and more kind of architectural or strategic approvals for Meteor. How can we make that easy for you? And I want to talk about one other audience too, which is we call them citizen developers, so the people who aren't professional developers. I talked about Meteor's mission earlier, or MDG's mission at least, where we want to make application software development radically easier, faster, less expensive, more accessible. There's a huge group of people out there that are underserved by current developer tools, and they're finding that Meteor lets them do things that they otherwise never could have done, maybe because they don't have a professional background in software development. One of my long-term goals for the company is to, I hope that one day we will have lots and lots of resources that we can bring to bear to making software easier to write than we even can imagine right now with, and maybe these are tools like visual builders or tools like very simple schema designers. But I would say that our focus right now is on professional web developers because we know that we need to build the best tool for professional developers, and we need to get it adopted in the enterprise before we can go serve the citizen developers. We know that if we don't build a technology that's widely used by professionals, we don't want to give people a toy.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. My question from there is, right now on Galaxy, you guys have a lot of startups that have started using a Meteor. Now, targeting the enterprise, when I hear that, it's a different industry to me. It's more like line of business, internal apps. Are you guys still going to be targeting startups, encouraging them to use Meteor for their platform?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the typical path according to which a lot of revolutionary technologies grow, and JavaScript is no exception. And within JavaScript, Meteor is no exception. You've got to start with the startups. You've got to start with the people that are on the cutting edge of innovation. And that is how the community and the initial proof points are built that then enable the technology to transition into enterprise environments. So I think that I don't think we're going to end up with a balkanized JavaScript where there's a different set of technologies and tools for startups and for the enterprise. I think it's going to all be the same set of tools. So I think we as a community need to pull together and say, well, we've made a lot of progress in the world of startups, in the world of smaller companies sometimes. And now I think what we as a community are starting to see is more and more progress in the enterprise. So I don't think the two are incompatible at all. I think it's more about adding something rather than taking something away.
It makes a more robust product for the enterprise, because usually enterprise doesn't worry too much about scaling because they're not going to have hundreds of thousands of people on it. But if you're building something that is both scalable for startups, but also meets all the needs for the line of business apps for enterprise, that's going to be one solid piece of software, that one solid platform. So that's pretty amazing. I'm going to go a little off script a little bit right now because I'm curious. Sure. Are you guys reach out and partner with like Microsoft and Salesforce, the people who have already penetrated the enterprise?
I don't have anything about that to announce today. How about that?
Okay. I find that totally interesting because I came from the enterprise, and I built a line of business app, and that's how I got introduced to Meteor. Because,
great.
I was doing Angular and Firebase.
Yeah.
And it was hard getting Mongo adopted. Everything that my enterprise, and it was an international company, everything that they had built was on Azure or transferring over to Azure from a private cloud. And they were like skeptical. It's like, okay, this has not had the Microsoft stamp of approval on it. So we're going to look at it with like a stink eye. And, I kind of went out and was a rebel and developed this thing for Meteor anyway. And it was a much lower burden for the administrators, the network administrators. They loved it. The users loved it. The end experience was amazing. And this was back at like 0.8, I think, or somewhere around there. But just looking back at it, like if there was like some sort of like clear path of saying like Microsoft likes this thing or something like that, it would have been checked off so much easier for me.
So I think you present it really well. The blocker is SQL support. So I think you can expect to see a lot more from us along those lines once we have Apollo out there and once we have SQL support and support for, even a wider range of data sources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think
another thing you can expect to see are other commercial products from us that aren't just the hosting piece, so that there are options for the enterprise to pay us money, which is also a key part of our plan.
Very cool.
Even if they're not ready to go into the cloud. So Galaxy is a great option if you're ready to go into the cloud. We also know that there's a lot of data gravity in the enterprise around existing SQL databases or other existing enterprise services, and we know that it can be challenging to connect those to public cloud services sometimes. Yes. So there'll be some exciting stuff this year, I think, that we'll be able to get out there.
That's exciting. I'm gonna interject a little suggestion. You guys have an amazing accounts package that makes integrating with social OAuth like super simple, and then you got your own password authentication. Active Directory, official Active Directory support. If there's just something official that would be tying you and Microsoft together, also like you mentioned SQL, like those things, it would just be like the enterprise is going to be like, wow, Meteors really is for us. Just throw it out there, a little bug.
I really appreciate that suggestion. I think there's a huge opportunity around enterprise connectors and integrations more generally, because there's so much valuable stuff inside the systems that you built inside of your enterprise, and there's so much pressure to take that and move it to everyone's devices wherever they are. And the faster you can build those applications, whether that's an Active Directory connector or connectors to any of the other things that you might have, where you might have valuable data or valuable services that you want to surface onto mobile or onto the web in a different way. And I think there's then it's just a question of what do we do first?
Yeah, totally.
And what partners do we work with to make it as easy to adopt as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. The last question was, how close is MDG to being cash flow positive?
Well, that's not something we release, but what I can tell you is we have 2.5 years of money in the bank. So it's there's a lot going on. There's some stormy weather out there right now for some startups that are venture funded. We are very well positioned to weather the storm, both because of the great community we have and also because of the great backers we have and because of the funding we have and because we're a fairly frugal organization. So
very good.
We're in a good place. Put another way, we know we're in this for the long haul, and we've structured our business accordingly.
That's awesome to hear. That is amazing. Those are the comfort words that all the developers want to hear. Right on.
Partial transmission complete.
Transmission, a weekly show about the most impactful posts from our Meteor.js forums. This show is sponsored by Meteor Galaxy Hosting, a containerized cloud service specifically designed and engineered for Meteor app deployment. Learn more at meteor.com/galaxy. This show is also sponsored by OKGrow, an official Meteor consulting partner building full stack web and mobile apps. Learn more at okgrow.com.